My girlfriend just told me we're having a baby, but I know that's impossible. I stared at her, pretending to be happy. But inside, I was screaming. I needed to know the truth. I don't know how to start this, because my hands are still shaking and my head feels like it's full of static. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, let alone living through it. But I need to get this out somewhere, because if I don't, I feel like I might lose my mind. I've been with my girlfriend, Claire, for almost 7 years. We met in college, and she was everything I could have ever wanted: funny, ambitious, kind. She made me feel like I had finally found a home in someone. I trusted her completely. Never once did I doubt her love for me. Never once did I think I had to. That was before last night. Before she sat across from me at our favorite Italian restaurant, nervously twirling her wine glass, and told me she was pregnant. I remember the way she said it, so carefully, like she was unwrapping a fragile gift. She looked at me with this wide, hopeful expression, her voice shaking just slightly. "I have something to tell you," she had said. I'm pregnant." I should have smiled. I should have felt joy. Any normal man in a committed relationship might have reached across the table, taken her hand, and promised to stand by her. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I can't have children. I was 19 when the doctors told me. It was a genetic condition, one that made it impossible for me to have kids. I never told Claire, because it never seemed relevant. We weren't at the stage of planning for kids, and I always thought that if the time came, we'd just adopt or figure something out. But now she was sitting there, telling me she was pregnant, waiting for me to say something. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. My entire body went cold. My mind was screaming at me to react, to say something, but my mouth stayed shut. I just nodded, trying to keep my face neutral, while my insides twisted into knots. She mistook my silence for shock, the good kind. She grabbed my hand across the table and laughed. "I know, it's a lot to process. But isn't it amazing? We're going to be parents." I stared at her. I searched her face, her eyes, her smile, looking for something, some clue, some crack in her excitement that would tell me this wasn't real. That this wasn't happening. But she looked so happy. So convinced. And all I could do was sit there, drowning in my own silence. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Claire kept talking, about baby names, nursery colors, how she wanted to tell our families, but I barely heard any of it. My mind was caught in a whirlwind of thoughts, looping over and over the same impossible question: how the hell could she be pregnant? I must have said something, nodded at the right times, forced a weak smile, because she didn't notice anything was wrong. But inside, my chest was caving in. I paid the bill on autopilot. The waiter asked if we wanted dessert, and Claire giggled, saying something about how she had to be careful with sugar now, for the baby. Our baby. The words felt like acid in my throat. I drove us home, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. She hummed along to the radio, completely unaware that my entire world had just shattered into pieces. The second we got inside, she pulled me into a hug. "I know this is a shock," she whispered into my chest. "But I love you, and I know we're going to be amazing parents." I barely held it together. I kissed the top of her head, muttered something about needing to take a shower, and locked myself in the bathroom. That's when I lost it. I turned the shower on full blast, not to bathe, but to drown out the sound of my own breathing as I braced my hands against the sink, staring at my reflection. My face was pale, my eyes wild. I looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. Because I had. The ghost of the life I thought I had. The love I thought was real. I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. I started running through every possibility, no matter how ridiculous. Maybe the doctors were wrong all those years ago. Maybe some miracle happened. Maybe, no. I knew better than that. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the first article I could find about male infertility, and reread what I had already known for years. No possibility of natural conception. Period. I swallowed hard. That left only one explanation. Claire had cheated on me. I sat on the cold tile floor of our bathroom, staring at the shower wall as steam filled the room. My thoughts circled the same dark conclusion over and over again: Claire had cheated. There was no other way. No miracle, no mistake, just betrayal. I tried to imagine the moment it happened. Was it someone she worked with? Some drunken mistake on a girl's night out? Or was it worse, was this an actual affair? A full-blown, ongoing deception that had been happening behind my back for who knows how long. I clenched my fists. I needed proof. My first instinct was to confront her immediately, but I held myself back. If I went in there raging, demanding answers, she'd just deny it. I needed to know the truth before I accused her of anything. I forced myself to stand, turned off the shower I never stepped into, and wiped the fog from the mirror. My reflection stared back, hollow and tired. Get it together. By the time I stepped out of the bathroom, Claire was already in bed, curled up under the covers with a book resting on her stomach. She smiled when she saw me. Feeling better? She asked, tilting her head. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yeah. Come to bed, she murmured, patting the space next to her. I just want to hold you. I hesitated. Every cell in my body wanted to pull away, to demand answers, to call her out on this betrayal. But I forced myself to move forward, slipping under the blankets beside her. I needed to be careful, to act normal. If she was lying to me, I had to give her no reason to suspect that I knew. She draped an arm over my chest and sighed happily. I still can't believe we're going to have a baby. Neither could I. I lay there, staring at the ceiling long after she drifted off to sleep. My mind was already racing ahead, planning my next steps. I would check her phone first. Then her laptop. Her messages, her emails, her location history. Whatever it took. Because no matter how much I wanted to deny it, the truth was clear: the woman I loved had been lying to me. And I needed to know just how deep that lie went. I barely slept that night. I lay stiff as a corpse, my mind running through every possibility, every scenario, every painful detail I might uncover. Claire slept soundly beside me, her body pressed against mine like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't hiding something from me. I waited until her breathing turned deep and steady before I moved. Carefully, slowly, I slipped out of bed and stood in the dim glow of our bedroom. My heart pounded as I reached for her phone on the nightstand. Face ID. Damn it. I exhaled through my nose, thinking. Then, gently, I angled the phone toward her sleeping face. The screen unlocked instantly. I didn't let myself hesitate. I swiped to her messages first. Nothing suspicious. Just conversations with her friends, work messages, a few texts from her mom. I dug deeper. Her deleted messages. Still nothing. Then I checked her email. That's where I found it. A confirmation from a hotel, dated 2 months ago. A single night stay. A name I didn't recognize on the reservation details. My stomach twisted. I opened her GPS history next. There it was: she had been at that hotel the night of the reservation. My fingers felt numb. My mouth was dry. I forced myself to keep looking. I checked her gallery, scrolled through recent photos. Then, deep in a hidden folder, I found something that made my vision blur with rage. A picture. A mirror selfie. Claire, standing in a dimly lit hotel bathroom, wearing nothing but a towel. I could barely breathe. I backed out of her phone and set it down, my hands trembling. The weight of it all crashed over me like a tidal wave. There was no doubt now. No room for denial or excuses. She had slept with someone else. And now, she was carrying their child. I stood there in the dark, staring at Claire as she slept peacefully, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. My fists clenched at my sides, my chest tightening with every second that passed. How long has she been lying to me? Was it just that night? A mistake? Or had it been happening for months, maybe even years? My pulse hammered in my ears as I picked up her phone again. I needed more. A name. A face. I scrolled through her contacts, checked every app one could think of, but there was nothing obvious. She had been careful. Too careful. But she wasn't perfect. I went back to the hotel email and copied the name listed on the reservation, Nathan M. Nathan. My stomach churned. Did I know a Nathan? Had I ever heard her mention one? I racked my brain, but nothing clicked. I pulled up Facebook and typed the name in. Dozens of results. I needed more. I checked her work emails next, scanning for the name, and that's when I found it, an internal company memo from a few months back. Nathan Miller, newly hired in her department. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. So this wasn't some random mistake. This wasn't a one-time thing with a stranger in a bar. This was someone she saw every single day. I dropped her phone onto the nightstand, my chest rising and falling with short, shallow breaths. Claire stirred beside me, sighing softly in her sleep. I had two choices. Wake her up and confront her right now. Or, play dumb. Gather more evidence. Make sure there's no way she can lie her way out of this. I turned away from the bed, my whole body buzzing with adrenaline. I needed time. I needed to be smart. Because once I confronted her, there would be no going back. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that damn email. The hotel confirmation. The picture. The name, Nathan Miller, burned itself into my brain like a brand. By the time morning rolled around, I had made my decision. I wouldn't confront Claire yet. Not until I had all the proof I needed. Not until she had no way to twist the truth. I played my part. Acted normal. When she woke up, stretching with a sleepy smile, I forced myself to smile back. Morning, she murmured, kissing my cheek. I swallowed down the bile in my throat. Morning. She beamed at me, rubbing her stomach. Her stomach. The thought made my skin crawl. She was carrying another man's baby. But she had no idea I knew. She spent the morning buzzing with excitement, already planning a pregnancy announcement, looking up baby cribs, talking about prenatal vitamins. Every word out of her mouth felt like a knife to my gut. I nodded along, pretending to listen, pretending to care. But inside, I was calculating my next move. Step 1, find out how long this has been going on. I spent the day digging. Searching through bank statements, call logs, any trace of Nathan Miller in her life. By the afternoon, I had my answer. It wasn't just one night. It wasn't a mistake. It had been going on for 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of coming home to me after being with him. 6 months of kissing me, touching me, telling me she loved me, while carrying on an affair with some guy from work. I sat at my desk, staring at the evidence on my screen, my pulse pounding. Emails. Calendar invites. Even a goddamn dinner reservation for the two of them just last week. And the worst part? I still hadn't reached the bottom. Claire was lying to me about the baby. But was she planning to trap me into raising it? I needed to hear her say it. I needed her to look me in the eyes and keep up this lie, to confirm just how deep her betrayal ran. So I closed my laptop, forced the fury down into my gut, and walked into the living room, where she sat curled up on the couch, scrolling through nursery ideas. I sat beside her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and whispered the words that made my stomach turn. So, when do we tell everyone about the baby? She grinned, eyes lighting up with happiness. And that was when I knew. She wasn't just lying. She was planning to let me raise another man's child. Claire leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. She was glowing, positively glowing, as she scrolled through baby cribs, color palettes, and Pinterest nursery ideas. We should wait a little, she said dreamily. Just to be safe. But maybe after the first trimester, we can make an announcement. I felt my throat tighten. We. There was no we in this. She was going to let me stand beside her, smiling for pictures, telling our families, our friends, hell, the entire world, that we were having a baby. A baby that wasn't mine. I forced myself to nod, keeping my expression soft. Yeah, that makes sense. She sighed happily. I'm just so relieved you're happy about this. I was a little nervous about telling you. A little nervous? I wanted to laugh. To scream. To shake her and demand to know how long she had planned to lie straight to my face. But I didn't. Instead, I played along. Why were you nervous? I asked, my voice even. She bit her lip. I don't know. I guess. I was worried you'd be overwhelmed. She wasn't worried I'd figure it out. She wasn't worried about guilt or remorse or any of the things a decent person might feel after committing the ultimate betrayal. She was only worried about keeping her secret intact. Something inside me hardened. I was done being careful. I was done gathering proof. It was time to push her. You know, I said slowly, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Claire looked up at me, confused. What is? I gave her a small, deliberate smile. That we got pregnant so easily. I mean, it happened just like that. I snapped my fingers. She laughed, tilting her head. I mean, yeah. I guess we got lucky. Lucky. My stomach twisted. I leaned in, keeping my voice soft. It's funny, though. Because I remember a doctor telling me once that it might be difficult. That, you know. I might not be able to have kids. I watched her carefully. Watched for the cracks. Claire's smile froze for half a second, so quick that most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. Then she blinked, laughing it off. Well, I guess they were wrong, weren't they? There it was. The lie. The full, shameless commitment to this lie. She wasn't going to break. She wasn't going to confess. She was all in. I sat back, nodding slowly. Yeah, I murmured. I guess they were. But inside, something had snapped. I wasn't just going to walk away. I wasn't just going to demand answers. I was going to make sure she felt every ounce of the betrayal she had put me through. Everything had to be timed perfectly. Claire still believed she was in control, that she had successfully wrapped me in her web of deception. But she had no idea that I had spent the last 24 hours turning the trap back on her. The plan was simple. A family dinner. Both of our parents, a few close friends, the people who mattered most. Claire had been overjoyed at the idea, convinced that it was my way of celebrating the pregnancy. She spent the day making everything perfect, the table set beautifully, the living room spotless, the atmosphere warm and inviting. She moved through the house with a kind of blissful ignorance, completely unaware that this was the last night her carefully constructed lie would hold. As guests arrived, laughter and light conversation filled the space. Claire beamed, glowing with excitement, relishing in the attention. She held on to me throughout the evening, completely unaware of the storm waiting to break. When everyone was seated, Claire stood with confidence, eyes shining as she announced the pregnancy. Gasps of joy filled the room, hands clapped together in excitement, and Claire basked in the moment as if she truly believed it would last. She never saw it coming. The moment stretched, and then it was time. With deliberate movements, I stood, raised my glass, and prepared to shatter the illusion. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The warmth in the room drained away, replaced by confusion, then dread. Claire's expression flickered, just for a second, as if something deep inside her recognized the change in the air before her mind had time to process it. The evidence came next. The messages, the hotel reservation, the photo she had taken in the dim light of another man's bathroom mirror. The truth, in full, undeniable clarity, displayed for everyone to see. The silence was deafening. Claire's mother pressed a hand to her mouth, her father's face darkened with disbelief, and my own parent sat rigid, the weight of it sinking in. Claire didn't move at first. For the first time since I had met her, she was frozen, with nowhere to escape. Then the panic set in. Her hands trembled, breath quickened, eyes darting around the room as if searching for a way out. She took one step back, then another, before turning sharply and rushing from the room. Chairs scraped against the floor as others reacted, her mother reaching for her, her father shaking his head in stunned silence, my best friend exhaling sharply as he leaned back in his chair. My own mother looked at me, not with disappointment, but with a deep, aching sorrow. Claire disappeared into the hallway, a door slamming shut behind her. Her mother followed, knocking urgently, voice shaking, but no response came from the other side. The celebration had become a reckoning. The truth had been laid bare, and nothing could change it now. No one knew what to say. The weight of betrayal sat heavy in the room, thick and suffocating. There was no fixing this, no talking through it, no making sense of something so deliberate. The perfect illusion Claire had created had shattered in front of everyone she had fooled. And now, all that remained was the wreckage. The silence stretched in the wake of Claire's departure. The weight of what had just happened hung over the room, suffocating, inescapable. No one moved at first. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen was the only sound in an otherwise frozen moment. Claire's mother lingered by the bedroom door, knocking softly at first, then more urgently. No response came from the other side. Her father had yet to say a word. He sat still, staring at the evidence that had shattered the perfect image he had of his daughter. My parents, still seated at the table, looked at me, not with pity, but with something heavier. They had always believed Claire to be trustworthy, had welcomed her into the family with open arms. Now, that trust lay in ruins. Eventually, Claire's mother gave up on the locked door. She turned, expression tight with embarrassment and sorrow, as if she wanted to apologize for something she had no control over. But there was nothing left to say. One by one, people began to leave. No one lingered in the discomfort. My parents were the last to rise, my mother placing a firm but comforting hand on my shoulder before walking toward the door. They didn't ask me if I was okay because they already knew the answer. Claire didn't come out. As the door clicked shut behind the last guest, the house fell into complete stillness. The evidence of the evening still sat on the TV screen, casting a cold glow across the empty dining table. Plates of untouched food remained, a mockery of the celebration that was never meant to be. There was no satisfaction, no relief. Just emptiness. I stood for a long moment, staring at the bedroom door. There had been a time when I would have fought for answers, when I would have demanded the truth directly from her, forced her to explain herself. But now, there was no point. I had everything I needed. Without a word, I moved to the bedroom closet. Clothes were pulled from hangers, shoved into a bag with mechanical precision. Essentials first, nothing extra. The things I needed to leave and never look back. I didn't stop to think about how it had come to this. Didn't give myself room to feel the depth of the betrayal. There would be time for that later. Right now, the only thing that mattered was getting out of that house. As I slung the bag over my shoulder and walked toward the front door, I didn't look back. Let Claire sit with the wreckage she had created. Let her face the consequences of her own choices. I was done. And for the first time since she had uttered those two words, "I'm pregnant," I could finally breathe.